So hello, my name is Seth Griffin, and you're listening to Thinking Freely. And today I got with me again Walter Robertson, and today we're going to be discussing a question, and the question is going to be, how can God be love if He's not three persons? And what we're going to do is we're going to jump right into it, and we're going to listen to a video, and me and Walter just going to critique the video and see if it holds any water, see if the claims of the video are true, and yeah, so that's what we're going to do, Walter. We're going to jump right into it.
Sounds good. How can God be just love if he predates humanity? Doesn't love require someone to love first? What a great question. Yes, it does. Love is only a concept, a potential concept, if it's not relational. Wow. How could God be love before he created anyone else? Listen, you don't have to debate the Trinity with someone, but what you should be able to agree on, if they're one of those people who say, yeah, I think God is love, they have to logically at least buy in that if God is love, then this is who he must have been for all eternity before he created anyone else. Then God must be internally relational. He must always be relating in himself. Or to say God is love, those three beautiful words make no sense at all. You say God is potentially loving until he creates someone to become actually loving. But you could not say God's essence is love itself. He must always be relating. And we call that the Trinity. But whether or not someone wants to argue the logic of the Trinity, you can just say, if you believe God is love, you've at least moved to the point of saying God is internally relational. Now, I think the Trinity helps us understand how that works out in history. But Trinity or no Trinity, we at least believe God is internally relational. So when Jesus comes and is the Son of God, yet is also God, it doesn't shock us. It helps validate that God is love.
All right, Walter. So, what do you think of that video? That is something that I hear a lot of Trinitarians pose. I was listening to the Gospel Coalition today, and it was John Piper with D.A. Carson and Tim Keller.
Oh,
And
yes.
they talked for 20 minutes about how, if God is not love, how it affects every single doctrine in the Bible. If God is not a Trinity, and how he wouldn't be love, and therefore it would affect every doctrine in the Bible. So there's a lot of talk around this somehow seeming to be essential. So based off of the video that we just heard, which was a small clip, but there's a lot of Trinitarians who believe the exact same way. Just give a few thoughts maybe of what you think of that line of reasoning and the video that we just watched.
Yeah, those men are gentlemen that I respect a lot, men like Piper and
Yes.
those who come out of the Reformed camp. And, it is a very intriguing argument, to say the least. It gets people to think, because, we always envision or understand that love, especially from a Christian perspective. A Christian's perspective of love is very different than the world. Okay, the world would go ahead and say, "Yeah, I love you," and just by saying that they love a person, that's it. But there's this whole idea that love is something that's detached from action.
Yeah.
Right. No greater love than this, than a man lay down his life for another. We measure love by relationally. And so in some sense, this gentleman that we just heard speak is right, but it doesn't answer the full question. Okay. So, when we're looking at and we're trying to understand who God is in his essence is what he is made of in his nature and also in his character. We talked about this in the previous video. We call that the deity of God, which involves both, his nature and his character. To say that
God does not have these qualities within him to start with, is to, I believe, well, let me backtrack. Maybe I should say it this way, because a Trinitarian would say that God had all of these qualities within him eternally. But that's because the Son existed with the Father eternally, right?
Yeah.
And but is that a necessity? Let's say, for instance, this whole concept of love. You brought up the concept of, what about justice? What about patience?
Yeah.
Well, these qualities, virtues, such as kindness and humility and judgment and justice. Did he have to have those qualities or those characters or those traits available to him with Christ? Did he have to be patient with Christ? Did he have to have justice with Christ? Did he have to have humility with Christ?
Yeah.
No, it's a part of his nature. And so when we're talking about this idea of the essence of God, it doesn't require God to have somebody else, because God are those things. That's what makes up who God is.
Yeah. In the video, he said that if God is not a Trinity, then in his essence, he could not be love, because he would have to have an object to then put his love upon for him to be love. And so that's what you're kind of hitting at is, well, if in your essence you have to be love, be a Trinity to be love, then you would also have to, in your essence, have someone to judge before there's to display justice, for actually to be just for from all eternity. Correct?
That's right.
Yeah. And one thing,
That's right.
When I listened to him, and I heard Tim Keller say the same thing, he says, and he's trying to think logically about this, right? From a Trinitarian perspective, they're trying to think logically within their worldview. And I think that's what it falls down to. I don't necessarily think this is a biblical argument more than a logical argument from the Trinitarian perspective, because I heard Tim Keller say that if God is not a Trinity, then he has not loved from all eternity, and therefore his power is displayed over his love. But if he's a Trinitarian God, then his love is displayed in his power. And he kind of does a play on words, but it's just how logically it has to be if the Trinity is to be true. Now, let me just say this too. I think if you presuppose a Trinity, then that logic works. Okay.
Yes.
But that logic has to be consistently flown through every other aspect of God's character if you're going to use it logically to plug into God's love, just like you said. So if we continue with that logic, God was not just from all eternity. He only became just when he had to display his justice on sinful people who fail. So using that same logic, I know they're trying to be logical from the starting point to prove the Trinity, but if you're consistent with that logic, you also have to, if you presuppose a Trinity and hold to that logic, you have to say God is unjust. I can't see any other way if you want to follow that logic to its farthest end.
Absolutely. I think that, you hit on something that's very, that needs to be taken into consideration. I mean, how do you take what God is and separate that? I mean, that this is what makes up God. Even though there's no need for justice, that's a part of his character.
Yeah.
There's no need for patience. That's a part of his character. I mean, he has all the time, eternally backwards and forwards. I mean, he exudes patience, right?
Yeah.
And what went on, that there should be the aspect of justice and judgment. I mean, all of these are a part of God's character and his holiness. How is he holy as his major character when there is nothing in existence?
Yeah.
What is he holy from, right? What is he set apart from if there's no existence?
Yeah.
No,
and,
you can't say that. So the argument breaks down.
Yeah. And so the thing is, we're not saying that because this is a bad argument that the Trinity is not true. We're just saying that this is a bad argument because logically it doesn't hold any water. And so the thing is, what this guy in this video is kind of stating, and also with Tim Keller and all these other guys who portray this, is a Unitarian or a modalistic God cannot be love because they're only one person. And that is what they state. So, Walter, you as a modalist do not have a God in his very essence who is love. Like the argument is, or the Bible doesn't say God is just, but the Bible does say he is love, even though he is just, but the Bible doesn't necessarily say he's just, right? Isn't that like the argument that we hear? The Bible doesn't say that he is the other characteristics, but he is love, so therefore he has to be a Trinitarian God. And I still think that's trying to grasp for the logic of your own presupposition of coming to the conclusion already that God is Trinity, therefore this just fits my position.
Right.
But I don't think it can lead to Trinitarianism.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It doesn't prove Trinitary, the Trinity scheme of things. If you look at humanity, and let's shift the thing back to humanity.
Okay.
We are not sinners because we've sinned. We sin because we're sinners. When a baby is born, they're born sinners with original sin. I believe in the concept of original sin. Maybe there's some Christians out there, I know that there are, that don't believe in the concept of original sin, but we are born in sin. So we are by nature children of wrath, it says. Therefore, being that we have this nature, this propensity to do that which is bad, like a child. You don't have to train a child to do bad. They do what they naturally would do. That's in their nature. So they don't need an object to sin against in order for them to, it doesn't require an object to sin against. They are sinners in their nature. Okay. And so it is with God. In his nature, he is who he is. He doesn't need an object to necessarily void himself of these virtues.
Yeah.
But in order to demonstrate that which he already has, yes, he has to have an object in order to demonstrate that. But that comes out of his nature, right? In order to just demonstrate my evil, I have to have an object. Otherwise, you wouldn't see how evil I was.
I think
Does that make sense?
I think it's a beautiful illustration. Yeah. It's a beautiful illustration. It hits on I think it parallels perfectly with what we're talking about. And I think it also hits on the next thing, because if God is not three person, it makes him dependent on his creation to display his love. But if God is three persons, then he's not dependent on his creation to display his love, because he is perfectly loving within the triune God in three persons. And that is another argument that flows from this. If you serve a God who is one person, you have a God who is dependent upon his creation, and God is not dependent on no one. And I do think
That's interesting. Yes.
yeah, it's very interesting. I think that's also putting God in a box, saying you have to be this way. There is no other way you could be. Like, because of the way my logic works in my head, you cannot be any other way, God. Like, to tell God he cannot be just because he has no one to display his justice on, or he cannot be loved because he has no object to display his love on. But so you're going to take away from the very essence of who God is because you can't understand that in your logic. And so that is very interesting, that one, to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that bottom line, it sounds, I mean, it sounds really good
It sounds
on
good.
the surface, but the argument, I mean, and everybody just would leap onto that and latch onto that and say, oh man, this is, wow, I'm just, Piper, you just blew my mind, man. This is just the most awesome, you know, epiphany of whatever. And then it just kind of like, if you think about it, it just kind of like breaks down, so.
Well, to be honest with you, I think Piper is one of the ones that give biblical arguments. Like everybody else that I listen to, they just give that argument, but Piper tries to throw Bible at it. Like, the way his mind works is just brilliant. I love the way he pieces together the scriptures, and it's just the way his mind works is amazing. And we thank God that God was love from all eternity, no matter no matter the logic of anyway, God being one can be loved because he is God, and that's who he is. And a God who is Trinitarian does not have to be the only God that can be loving from all eternity. And so I just wanted to go over that video, and we want people to see that logic doesn't hold water when you try to make it consistently go off throughout the whole thing. Please be looking out for other videos that's coming down the pipe. Me and Walter has been getting together and discussing a lot of things, and we're truly trying to wrestle with the nature of God, because we do think it's important. We think God has given us logic, he's given us reason, and he wants us to worship him with all of our minds. And it is okay to discuss these things and not cast each other out of the kingdom for discussing these things. So I thank you for the freedom, Walter, for me to ask you these questions.
Oh, absolutely. I'd like to share something too. You know, look at, you know, to your audience out there, whoever listens to this thing, you know, you've been saved in a Christian church in the Western world, and most of the Christian churches in the Western world are going to embrace the Trinitarian doctrine. But does that necessarily make it right? If you grew up in a Christian nation, you go to a Christian church, you're listening to a Christian pastor, you got Christian brothers and sisters, you go to Christian Bible studies, of course you're going to come out believing in the Trinity.
Yeah.
It would be just like a Buddhist that grew up in China, born in China, went to a Buddhist church, went to, people that were trained as monks to go ahead and be a Buddhist priest and all that stuff. Of course you're going to believe that that's the truth. Yeah. And Islam too. It doesn't matter. You can be in India. You can grab onto the Bhagavad Gita, all that stuff. And look, it doesn't necessarily make it right. Just you have to test what's out there. Mm-hmm. And this is what we're trying to do. We're saying there's another way of looking at this thing. And with the advent of the internet, with the tools that are available to us, guess what? We can question those individuals who are in authority over us, and we need to do that, but we do it in love and with respect, and, we don't need to be anathematizing each other. Yeah. We need to be pulling the body of Christ together. That's what Christ wanted. He didn't want us, fighting against each other.
Yeah.
But despite our differences, he called us to love one another.
Yes. And I just want to leave the audience with one more thing, because you've heard Walter say it, and he says when talking about the Trinitarian view, if they believe that the Son is a second person of a Trinity, that cancels him from being a valuable redeemer because he's not truly human. And that is a logical conclusion, but he does not cast people out of the kingdom for holding that position. And I think what a lot of people do, Trinitarians specifically, when they say modalism destroys the gospel, and they'll give their logical conclusion of why modalism destroys the gospel, and they say, see, so if you truly hold to this position, it destroys the gospel, therefore you don't have the gospel. That is not what Walter's doing. Even though he's making his argument, and as we said before, hey, it's maybe could be a salvation issue, but we just didn't necessarily come to that conclusion. These are just some warnings that we're trying to be as biblically consistent as we could, that there's some views that could fall into dire error, but that does not necessarily mean someone's outside the kingdom for holding to heresy and me and Walter's talked about that before. I just want to leave you guys with that. And
so long as you're living on this side of the turf, you're still, okay.
Yeah.
Just, it's, you're not pushing up tulips yet, but I'm not going to be anybody's judge. It's not my part to be anybody's judge.
Yeah.
But in the measure that you judge other people, is going to be judged unto you. And we need to be careful with that. A lot. Are you willing to go? Are you willing to die for the Trinity? I mean, my goodness. Am I willing to die on modalism? No. But there's room to work this out.
Yeah.
We should only be willing to die for Christ's sake, right?
Yeah. I wish it would be as easy that one side or the other, one side would all be hateful people, and the other side would all be people who are more generous and all. Like, you can definitely tell which one's right and wrong now, right? But there's good people on both sides.
Well,
there's hateful people on both sides.
What's really interesting is that you do see, there is a lot of weight with, the Trinitarians coming down on,
there is. There is.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of weight. And usually when you listen to the other guys like Bernard and, Ritchie, Stephen Ritchie and some other, what is it, Roger Perkins and all these guys are saying, no, we believe in the same God. They're not giant, they're just, it's like, okay, they'll battle over the issue of Trinitarianism and modalism, but they say, oh no, we believe in the same God. We look at you guys as brothers. But the Trinitarians that are debating them are saying, no way, man, you believe in a different Jesus, you're damned to hell and all that stuff. It's like, okay, well, just a moment. Maybe you can draw the line that way, like you're saying.
I think so. I think character tells a lot. You'll know them by the fruit. And so thank you so much, Walter, for coming on here again.
You.
And we're going to continue this topic another time. But guys, we hope you enjoy this topic. If you have any questions, please email me at thinkingfreely1@gmail.com. We'd love to answer your questions. If you email us, if you email me, I'll bring the questions to Walter and give him a chance to look at it, and we'll get on here and we'll discuss the questions even. And so we just hope you enjoy.
Or maybe we can even have a threesome. You can invite other people to your channel and just do it very much like some others, and have a three-way conversation, batting the ball back and forth. That might be something that you may want to entertain, but do it respectfully and giving each other equal time and to just discuss things.
Yeah,
might be a good thing to do.
It's always good to hear the other side. So thank you so much, Walter, and God bless you next time.
God bless you too, sir.